Hello, in this video, I am going to focus solely on the classical argument and why we need to be aware of it for SAT prep, reading beyond this. The classical argument is, as its moniker suggests, the classical argument. It is the one that has been used for years upon years upon years upon years by academics and scholars worldwide. And that's why we kind of need to be aware of it, even though we don't necessarily teach that in our schools. In our schools, we hammer people with um, order of importance and 5 paragraph essays. But we need to kind of break that mold if we're serious about taking on the SAT. So, specifically speaking, the classical argument can be broken into what are essentially 5 parts, although there's kind of a 6th part, and we'll talk about what that is. And you can call that the 7th if you want. Nonetheless, the first part of it is known as the Exordium, which is the introduction, opening, or hook. A good example of this is actually in Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail when he introduces himself to his fellow clergymen and basically explains why he's done what he's done, specifically like why he has time to write a letter, and that why he's answering their criticism is basically what he spends the first couple paragraphs doing. So there's usually an introduction, an opening, or a hook where the speaker usually introduces themselves, or they reach out to the audience and try to get the audience to hear exactly what's going to be coming as far as an attention-getting device, and then the main idea. The next part of a classical argument is known as the narratio. And what that refers to is basically narrating and telling the story of the topic, like what is happening in this. In Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail, he narrates why he's there and why injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So he tells the story of the context of his rhetorical argument and why he has done what he has done, which then brings us then to what is known as the proposito and the partitio. So the proposio is the claim or stance that is the main overall stance that the person is taking. And then the partitio is to break it up into its parts. Dr. King uses this both in the letter from Birmingham jail and in his speech on the war in Vietnam, because what he does is he lays out a numbered list of like why he did what he did or his claim or stance. If you read Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail, he says that there's a 4-step process to any nonviolent direct action campaign. If you have listened to or read Dr. King's speech on the war in Vietnam, he lays out the step-by-step parts of the process through which right can be done. So he follows this very poignantly and closely. The next part of the argument is known as the confirmatio, and sometimes they include what's called the refutatio. The confirmatio is basically positive proofs to support the claim that the speaker is making. So if I'm making an argument on a particular topic, if I present positive evidence to support my argument, that's part of the confirmatio. On the other hand, though, a lot of times speakers have to do that part known as the refutatio, which is to actually argue against the counter arguments that other people have made. And that takes place in Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail when people talk about, why now, or why are you causing this, or you're breaking laws and stuff. And he argues very vehemently against that basically just because it's the law doesn't mean that it's right. Which then takes us to what most speakers use at the end, which is the per oratio, which per means through, and then oratio meaning speech. It's basically the conclusion and the call to action at the end of the speech. Like all of this argument, the proposito, the partitio, the confirmatio, the refutatio, have all led to this one moment. So what are we going to do about it? The conclusion and a call to action are usually the features of this part of the argument. Now, for the sake of SAT prep, it is almost impossible for the SAT to include the full classical argument that somebody has made. So what you have to do as a reader is you have to read what they're doing and try to infer what part of the classical argument is being made, and you'll notice the features of it. Nonetheless, being exposed to good examples of the classical argument and being exposed to some of these historical and argumentative documents from the past that followed this are going to make you a better reader and to give you a greater context in which the scholarly events have taken place, historical events have taken place, the ideas of different time periods to get an idea of what the human condition was like and what people were struggling with. So, studying the classical argument and examples of it is going to be beneficial for you as a learner in general, and not just in being able to pass or get a good score on the SAT.